Where were food shortages most severe during the Civil War? Have you ever wondered how families managed to put food on the table during the American Civil War? Food shortages were a harsh reality for many, especially in certain regions. The South, particularly the Confederate States, faced the most severe shortages. This situation arose from several factors that disrupted food production and access. At the beginning of the war, both the Union and the Confederacy struggled with food supply issues. However, the South was hit much harder. The loss of millions of men to military service left farms short on labor. This labor shortage led to lower crop yields. Many Southern farmers were also encouraged to grow cash crops like cotton and tobacco instead of food. This made the South more dependent on imports, which were hard to come by as the war progressed. Union naval blockades, part of the Anaconda Plan, played a significant role in worsening food shortages in the South. These blockades cut off Southern ports, preventing the import of food and other essentials. As the war dragged on, the effectiveness of the blockade increased, making it even more difficult for Southern civilians to obtain basic necessities. Transportation networks were also heavily affected. Railroads and roads were often destroyed or taken over for military use. This made it challenging to move food from rural areas to cities. Urban centers, where people relied on food brought in from elsewhere, faced severe shortages. Some of the most dramatic shortages occurred in major Southern cities. For instance, Richmond, Virginia, the Confederate capital, experienced the famous Richmond bread riots in April 1863. Hundreds of women, desperate for food, took to the streets to protest and loot stores. The situation became so dire that Confederate President Jefferson Davis threatened to use force to disperse the crowd. Other cities like Atlanta, Georgia, and Lynchburg, Virginia, also saw dramatic price increases and food riots. In Lynchburg, the cost of a barrel of flour skyrocketed to $275 by the end of 1863, for beyond what most families could afford. Rural areas were not spared either. Farms suffered from labor shortages, and military campaigns often destroyed crops and livestock. General William Tecumseh Sherman's march to the sea in 1864 devastated Georgia's agricultural output, leaving a wide path of destruction and further reducing food supplies. Families across the South had to find substitutes for staples like coffee, sugar, and meat, or go without. Diaries and letters from the time describe people eating whatever they could find, including wild plants and animals. The situation was especially dire during sieges, such as the Siege of Vicksburg, where civilians were cut off from outside food sources and forced to survive on very little. In contrast, food shortages in the North were less severe. The Union had more resources, a larger workforce, and better access to food imports. While some areas experienced hardship, especially those near battlefields or with disrupted supply lines, most Northern families did not face the same level of desperation as those in the South. To sum it up, food shortages during the Civil War were most severe in the Confederate South, particularly in urban centers and areas affected by military campaigns or blockades. The combination of labor shortages, disrupted transportation, and Union blockades made it extremely difficult for Southern civilians to obtain enough food, leading to widespread hardship and protests. Families had to adapt by finding substitutes or going without, and the situation only worsened as the war continued.